I know it.
Now this beautiful yellow car standing beside me is the Audi S5 Sportback, and allow me a moment to try and put that into perspective. What exactly is an Audi S5 Sportback? Well, the clue is all in the name. Because it's an S5, it sits between the S4 and the S6 in Audi's model range. And if you know Audi's S cars, you know that means it is a sort of halfway point between the more mundane A cars, everyday use, and the really hardcore performance cars that have the RS badge on them. And the last clue is Sportback. As you can probably tell, it's not a conventional sedan in the way it's shaped. Yes, it has 4 doors, but it's also got this lovely curving roof, and it adds just a little bit more sex appeal to the package. So what this car claims to be is a performance sedan that also has a whole lot of everyday practicality built into it and a bit of style as well. So I want to see how well it does all of those things. Okay, admittedly, at first glance you could mistake the S5 Sportback for an A4. It's about the same size after all. They even have similar details like the headlamps, tail lamps and grille. But take a second look and you'll notice that it's wider and lower, that it has an ever so subtle curve down the side, and of course that it has an elegant sloping fastback roof. In fact, if you open the large tailgate, you'll find a boot big enough for 4 people's weekend luggage. Also part of the Sportback package are doors with frameless windows that open up to reveal a rather spacious cabin. Now you might think that because of this car's low coupe-like roofline, that headroom back here is quite compromised. And yes, it's not as good as a full-on sedan. But that said, it stretches so far behind that you do actually have enough headroom here, and it's also scooped out for that little bit more. Legroom, as you can see, is more than enough, and the seats themselves are very, very comfortable. But we would say that it's probably best just for 2. So, the S5 Sportback does practicality really well. But remember, it's also meant to pack in some performance. So let's step into the seat that matters most. So the first thing you need to know about the S5 Sportback right off the bat is that it's based on the S4, which in turn is based on the current A4, and that has its implications. You see, the current A4 is one of the oldest models in Audi's range right now, and you can see the signs of that inside this car as well, starting with the dashboard. Yes, it's very well built, but the design is a bit old compared to what you get in modern Audis. You do get a few requisite sporty touches, like this nice flat-bottom steering wheel and these optional sports bucket seats. The other area where you can see the signs is in the technology, like this Mmi system. It's got a small screen, and although it has all the functionality you need, including satellite navigation, the interface just seems a little bit old school in comparison to new Audis. But it's also inherited some good stuff from the Audi S4, and that includes the powertrain. It's a 3-litre supercharged V6 producing 328 brake horsepower. And because it's supercharged, the power delivery is absolutely instant. There's no delay, and all the torque seems to come up almost from the word go. It does all this while making a nice little purr. Not a growl like the RS5, but that only reflects its more civilized nature. It's properly quick too, with 45 kgm of torque rocketing the car forward relentlessly. Audi's 5.1 second 0 to 100 kph claim is completely believable. The other bit of the powertrain that it's inherited from the S4, of course, is the 7-speed dual-clutch gearbox. And as ever with Audi's dual-clutch gearbox, this one works quickly and intuitively. When you're in comfort or efficiency modes, it's quick to get you to the higher gears to save fuel. But if you pop it into dynamic mode, well, it's always at the right rev. Of course, if you want to take matters into your own hands, there are shift paddles available behind the steering wheel. Drive it gently in efficiency mode and you might actually get decent fuel economy out of it. So, when it comes to the looks, the space and the powertrain, the S5 Sportback lives up to its dual-purpose brief. And that brings us on to the underpinnings. Unfortunately, this being a slightly older chassis, the steering is also part of the package, and it is a classic old school Audi steering, and that means it's a bit numb, and that does detract ever so slightly from the driving experience when you're really going flat out. On the flip side, it does have the advantage of being really light and easy to use around town, and you'll appreciate that if you plan to use the S5 as a daily driver. What you'll also like is the ride quality. Although the S5 is a performance car, it's also intended for use every day, and to that end, the suspension has been very well calibrated. There's no adaptive suspension, and that's a bit of a shame. We would have liked that in a car like this. But still, the regular fixed suspension is a good blend of comfort and firmness. It hasn't been raised for India like any of the Audi A cars, and that's really good when you want to drive fast. I'd go as far as saying it rides better overall than even the standard A4. It doesn't float and bounce around when you go faster, but it's still quite supple, and the stiffness means it will hold its own in the corners. And speaking of corners, there is of course Quattro all-wheel drive to keep you clung to the road, and there's even a sport mode for the traction control that will let you have a bit of fun while keeping you safe. Well, all things considered, I think the Audi S5 Sportback has done everything it set out to do. It's a fantastic blend of performance and practicality, and if you're the type of person who thought the S4 was just a little too plain and a little too run-of-the-mill, the swooping Sportback shape of this car takes care of that as well. All this is bundled together at just a shade under Rs 63 lakh, and at that price, well, it doesn't really have too much competition.